Well, hello, friends, and welcome back once more to our Tiny Kitchen series here in the aptly named Tiny Kitchen at Chez Recessionista. So, Lucky the Wonder Cat has already been fed. So now it is time for Lily, my husband, and I to be fed similarly, though perhaps not the same exact food, if you catch my drift, as we are vegetarians, and she is not. At any rate, you are visiting us today on an incredibly drab, cloudy winter day. Our friends to the north in Boston and New York are about to get a whole wallop of winter storm. We, on the other hand, are getting probably 1 to 3 inches overnight, which is much more manageable for this Floridian transplant, that's for sure. Typically, this is a Monday, as I'm recording this, and typically our Mondays are reserved for Crockpot Mondays. But I'm afraid I have some bad news, which is to say, I was a little bit behind in waking up this morning and going to the gym, and as a result, then I was a little bit behind in coming back home to get ready for work. And then did I mention I had to swing by the CVS and pick up some medications? And then did I mention, and as a result, there was no food in the crock pot for this morning. But no matter, because here we are tonight, we're going to make in the Le Creuset, my beloved Le Creuset, the same thing that we were going to make this morning, or that I was going to make this morning, taco soup. If you've been watching the blog for a while, you know that taco soup is a mainstay for us, especially in the winter and spring months. There's just nothing better than a hearty soup straight out of the crock pot or the Le Creuset to warm up the soul. But we've also been known to have it in the summertime with great success, and of course in the autumn as well. Now, this recipe was brought to me a few years ago by a good friend of mine, a childhood friend of mine actually, called Jessica, and I hope you're watching, Jessica. She's probably my longest tenured friend. We've actually known each other since kindergarten, which was just a few years ago, and so she and I have known each other for decades now. I won't say how many decades. She came up with this recipe a few years ago and sent it to me and a couple of other friends, and I have to tell you, it has been just a beloved mainstay in our diet ever since. So let's get started. It's incredibly simple to make. This will be both a speedy and tiny kitchen series today. Basically, the recipe for this is stick all of what I'm about to tell you in a pot and let it simmer. If you're doing it in the crock pot, let it simmer all day on low. If you're doing it in the Le Creuset, 30-45 minutes will do. So let's get started. So because I'm throwing all of this in at once, I'm not even putting in any oil. Like this is just this, this Puritan of me today. So to start, to give it a little base before I turn on the heat, I'm going to put in a package, and this might get the Wonder Cat excited because she might think it's cheese, of chickenless strips. Now this, you can use any kind you like. These are from Trader Joe's. Do you hear the cat, the Wonder Cat at all? She is crying next to my left leg as we speak. There she is. So I'm going to put this here and turn on the heat. Now I'm going to turn it on to about medium to start, and then you just continue on. So next we have a can of tomatoes with green chilies, aka Rotel, aka Southwestern style from Safeway Kitchens. Next you have a can of chili beans or ranch style beans, what have you. What's the difference between chili beans and pinto beans? They're the same bean. The chili beans have kind of a mild sauce, and check to make sure it's vegetarian. I actually haven't found any that aren't vegetarian, but I'm sure they're out there, so do read the label just to be safe. Next you'll put in a can of tomato sauce, a small can rather, of tomato sauce. And get tomato sauce on your hands. Then you're going to put in a can of black beans. Now, with all these, I'm sure you're noticing that I'm not draining anything. I'm putting all the liquids in. And I know that some people say, oh, you ought to drain them and rinse them on account of the sodium. But I confess that is not where my head is at. I'm sorry. You're welcome to drain them if you want, or rinse them, or what have you. Or use dry, though honestly that's a little more of a process. But I am not. And we're just keeping it real here in the Tiny Kitchen. So next we have a can of kernel corn, just plain old kernel corn, and as you can see I'm not even draining that, and I know that's heresy, is it not? Now for a little seasoning, I've got two things for you. Now my friend Jessica's recipe calls for onion, just for diced onion at the bottom of all this. You know, and I did that religiously for probably the first year that I made this dish. And then one day I was in a hurry, or maybe I didn't have an onion, or maybe I dropped it in the trash. I don't know. In this place, anything's possible. I put in some minced onion instead, and do you know what? I have never gone back. I have done this ever since. So we're going to do that again today. And I wish I had a measurement for you. I really don't. I just kind of put it in to taste. Just eyeball it. It won't hurt you. Next, I have some taco seasoning. Now, I talked a minute ago about the sodium in the cans and how I'm not all that concerned about it. Well, apparently I am concerned about it in the taco seasoning because I always get the less sodium kind. This one is the 30% less sodium. Now, here comes the cat running in, I see. So she may begin to say hello once more. Oh, she ran right past. Then, finally, I know, we're here already. Take a container of veggie broth. Now, my friend Jessica also will do 2 cups of veggie broth and a bottle of beer. Not a bad way to do it, really, but I've always done vegetable broth. So just pour it into, by this point, whether you're doing the pot, you know, the Le Creuset or the crock pot, it's going to be pretty well filled up. And that's good, because this makes a ton. And I want to tell you, for being as simple as it is to make, it is incredibly impressive in the bowl. I cannot tell you the amount of times where we've hosted friends for the weekend or whatever, or for dinner, and they say, "Oh, what are you making?" And I say, "Taco soup." And they're kind, I mean, they're polite, but they're like, "Oh, it's good." And you can tell they're kind of skeptical, and you think, "Aha, you know, I'll get you." Now, while we're talking, I'm going to bring this up to high. Okay, not really, I'll get you, but I'm going to surprise you. How about that? I get you sounds a little bit like retribution. I don't mean it that way. But in other words, I'm going to surprise you. And sure enough, by the time we're back from our day's sightseeing, or, you know, by the time we sit down to dinner, if we're having friends over for the evening, I spoon this up, you know, out of the pot or out of the crock pot, and everyone's polite, and they're like, "Oh, it's good." And then, you know, they put a little sour cream on it or a little cheese, and they dip some, you know, tortilla chips in it. And they're like, oh, this is good. And I can't tell you the amount of people that have said that. At first I thought it was just like one person, you know, but it has happened time and again. I guess taco soup doesn't really sound all that interesting, but let me tell you, it is. It is fantastic. It is Lily's one of Lily's favorite dishes in the world. If he has been away, and like I'm going to go pick him up from the airport at night, I'll have taco soup ready a lot of times in the crock pot for when he gets home. It is such a wonderful, and as you can see, it's such an easy dish to make as well. I mean, there's really no magic to it. In fact, I almost feel a little bad inviting you into the tiny kitchen to enjoy this with me. But then it occurred to me, you're just like any of my other friends, and I would love to show off my taco soup to any of my friends. So I'm really glad you came along. Now all that's left is to let this heat up. I've cranked the heat up to high, as I said, and let this come to a boil, and then let it cook for generally 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. Because this is vegetarian and because I'm using the chickenless strips, all it really needs is to heat through. Everything's generally fully cooked in here. It can't kill you, which is always nice, that your food will not kill you. But it's just 30, 45 minutes and it's done. Open a glass of wine, pop open a beer. I was about to say a burrito. That is not correct. Pop open a beer, a Corona, a Trader Jose's, and enjoy yourself. So rather than the two of us sitting here together watching the pot try to boil, and you know what they say about a watched pot, I think that perhaps we can retire to the living room and meet back here in the kitchen in 30, 45 minutes. Remember, kick it to high. When things start bubbling and boiling, turn it down to low or medium low until you find that everything is cooked fully through, about 30 or 45 minutes. So let us retire out into the drawing room, you see, in the tiny house, just outside the tiny kitchen, and we'll meet back here in about half an hour. Well, welcome back. It's been about 40 minutes since we retired to the living area to catch up on old times. And I did enjoy hearing all of your wonderful stories about what all is going on in your life. So thank you so much for coming over. While we have been visiting, the taco soup has been just simmering away perfectly wonderfully. And it is now ready to be devoured. Now, as this is a tiny kitchen, All of the condiments are actually out in the dining area at this moment, so you cannot see them in here. However, please know that they consist of Tabasco sauce. We're using the Chipotle kind tonight. Daya pepper jack cheese, tofutti sour cream, and I received no sponsorship from any of these people. I'm just telling you what's out on our table right now. And then we're using some tortilla strips, which, if you must know, are made by Mission, though anything will do quite nicely. We like the strips for dipping in this. It's very good. And so all of it's a matter of just kind of decorating it up once it's spooned into a bowl. So as you can see, it's still very thick. Everything has cooked very nicely. The smell coming out of this kitchen is wonderful. It's kind of slightly spicy, very tomato-y. You can smell the onion. You can also smell the taco seasoning a lot. And it's a very thick, it's brothy, but it's also a thick brothy soup. Definitely a soup, not a stew. What's the difference? I don't know. At any rate, we've spilled over a little bit as it's boiled, but these things are bound to occur in the tiny kitchen. And so I think I will just spoon up the first bowl now. This one is for you. Now, do you like more broth or more meat in yours? I'm going to split the difference. And that, my dear friends, is that. Perfectly wonderful, perfectly filling. A little spice to your night, especially to a Monday night, a dreary Monday night. And so easy to do, whether in the crock pot or in the Le Creuset or stock pot. Either one works just wonderfully. So please give this recipe a try. You can certainly find it all over the blog, and I will link to this recipe on my blog, on the video post on my blog momentarily. And I hope you all enjoy it so much. And thank you again for coming. I hope you'll come back again very, very soon. You're always welcome here in the tiny kitchen. Good night.